have seen a reduction in hours, go to your local supermarket, look online, look at these wholesale distributors that are out there. They're looking for workers. We'd love to have you at this time.
Tell me a little bit about how you're making sure those frontline workers, as you called them, are protecting themselves. Does everyone wear gloves? Are you wiping down product? Should customers be wiping down that product before they take it home?
So the most important thing is we're following federal, state, and local guidelines when it comes to protecting our employees, protecting our customers in the store. That includes making sure that, first and foremost, if an employee is sick, they are told not to come to work. And that goes for customers, too. If you're not feeling well, please don't come in our stores. That's very important. But stores are wiping down check stands. They're wiping down handles on freezers, on refrigerators, doing a deep clean at night. You've seen many stores have adjusted hours, not only to allow them to restock, but allow them to do a deeper clean as well. And so we're taking precautions. We're making sure that everyone is safe and taken care of. And we look forward to continuing to serve our customers.
You know, bigger picture, I got to ask you, you see more people shopping online as they're avoiding going into these public spaces and into stores. Do you see this moment in time as changing the way we shop for groceries?
I definitely think we're obviously seeing an uptick in e-commerce and online orders, both in terms of click and collect, but also in terms of delivery. And I do think we'll see an uptick in that going forward. But people also do still enjoy going to their grocery store. They enjoy selecting their produce, selecting their meat. And I think that's going to continue for some time.
Bottom line, the food is there. Don't panic. Buy what you need.
Yes.
Greg Ferrer of the National Grocers Association, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And please join us tonight for our virtual town hall confronting coronavirus. That's at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central on all PBS stations. Streaming in the PBS app and on the PBS NewsHour social channels, including YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Some of your questions will be answered by those on the front lines battling the crisis, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, who spoke about the president's decision today to fast-track some medicines in their earliest stages that are not yet proven.
What you do is you strike a balance between making something available to the public at the same time you do it under the auspices of a protocol. And it could be a relatively loose protocol, like an expanded access protocol, and even do some compassionate usage, where you have a balance between getting things to people who need it, but at the same time not just throwing drugs out there that you don't know anything about.
Join us tonight for Confronting Coronavirus right here on PBS at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central. In the day's other news, Iran granted a medical furlough to U.S. Navy veteran Michael White, part of a wider release of prisoners amid the coronavirus pandemic. He had been jailed since 2018 for insulting Iran's supreme leader. He must remain in Iran for now. And Lebanon freed American Amr Fakouri. He had been held since September for overseeing torture of Lebanese, but now has stage 4 cancer. In Washington, President Trump lauded the news.
The United States has no higher priority than the safety and well-being of our citizens. We've gotten a tremendous number of hostages out, as you know. I think we're 42-0, and I want to let everyone know that recovering Americans held captive and imprisoned abroad continues to be a top priority for my administration.
The president also called on the Syrian government for the release of American journalist Austin Tice, who was kidnapped in Syria in 2012. In the U.S. presidential campaign, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii suspended her long-shot bid for the Democratic nomination today. Instead, she endorsed Joe Biden in a message to her supporters. Gabbard said that despite their political differences, Biden is the best choice to unite the country. And the Olympic torch was officially handed over to organizers of the Tokyo Summer Games under the shadow of the coronavirus pandemic. The normally elaborate ceremony was held in an empty stadium in Athens, Greece. The Japanese delegation was unable to attend due to travel restrictions. There have been calls to delay the July Games because of the pandemic. Still to come on the NewsHour, the future of the U.S. economy is shrouded in uncertainty. What can we learn from the financial crises of the past? The star of the acclaimed film Roma on challenging social inequities in modern Mexico. And a doctor gives her brief but spectacular take on practicing medicine in rural America.
This is the PBS NewsHour from WETA Studios in Washington and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
As the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic continues, businesses across the country are being crippled by closings and layoffs. The number of Americans filing for unemployment benefits surged last week to a 2.5-year high. For a look at how this economic downturn compares to others, Paul Salmon sat down with Harvard University economist Ken Rogoff. His book, This Time is Different, examines the history of financial crises. It's part of our regular series, Making Sense.
Is this time different?
Well, this is something extraordinary we're facing. It is really hard to think of a historical parallel. I've talked about this with my co-author, Carmen Reinhardt, and we have to go back to 1918, 1919, the Spanish influenza epidemic, which killed, millions and millions of people, to think of something like this worldwide. And it's not exactly the same as after World War I, when things were pretty bad already.
Is this a war?
I think so. I really feel like it's an alien invasion. We're being occupied. We're hiding in our houses. We're told not to leave. We're having a sudden stop in economic activity. We are going to see a recession, at least in the short term, the likes of which we have not seen, at least going back to World War II.
In terms of the U.S. economy, the global economy, how bad could it get?
Well, we don't know how long we're going to be in lockdown. When will there'll be antivirals? How soon will there be a vaccine? We just don't know how the crisis will unfold. We're still in the war, and until we come out the other end, it's hard to know. But I think what we do know is the short-term drop in output, and quite possibly in employment, could be worse than 2008.
Is there any chance that we won't come out of it in a year or two?
If the virus can be conquered and we can reach a stable situation, I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to do that. But it'll be different for different countries. Italy's in trouble. I mean, they have big pension problems, big debt problems, growth problems going into this. Emerging markets are in trouble. We're actually already seeing emerging markets start to fold under the weight of this. I don't know where China will be. That's a big question mark. I mean, everybody thinks China did great. China's conquered this. Not their economy. I mean, if they're lucky getting people back to work in the manufacturing sector, but who's going to buy the stuff once they start manufacturing if the rest of the world's in recession?
Are Congress, the President, and the Fed responding appropriately?
Let's say they're moving forcefully in the right direction. I think the response here to protect the healthy part of the economy needs to be just massive.
More massive than what they're doing now?
$1 trillion is just a starter package on what's going to end up needing to be done here. If you're shutting down a $23 trillion economy for 2 months or 3 months, that the expenses are just massive. Workers losing their jobs, businesses going out of business. You can't allow that to happen too far. So, no, I think we'll see many further packages of different types, not all like this one.
Bailing out the airlines, for example, the hotel industry, restaurants?
So one of the tough things in this, and I don't know how to make that judgment, is, how much, who to bail out. But certainly the hospitality industry, to some extent the airlines, they're bystanders here. They didn't create this. They weren't flying too many routes and about to go bankrupt. So I think you have to first, really importantly, the healthcare sector. We have to go in a military, wartime stance, if necessary, taking over parts of the private sector for production and of masks, of respirators, building up facilities. That will calm people down. That will help things pass. Then you have to help the directly affected people and sectors. And then the kind of bailout that they're talking about with sending checks to individuals, that's to protect the healthy parts of the economy. All of these things need to be done. And the Fed has to come in, and the Treasury, to provide loans to corporates, to businesses, so they don't go bankrupt, so that we have businesses when we come out of this.
You're someone who's worried about governments taking on too much debt. That's now not a consideration anymore?
No, absolutely not. I mean, there's never been a concern about our governments defaulting. The concern is being able to borrow massively when you need to. That's the whole point of saving for a rainy day. When it rains, you want to really open up the floodgates. And here, there's no limit. We're in a war. You have to win the war. I would have no problem with the government debt magically going up $5 trillion in the blink of an eye if we could get out of this in 2 or 3 months healthily. This is an emergency. You're not worrying about your credit standing right away. I don't think it's going to be a problem. And you know what? If we have inflation at the end of this, so what? If that's what we needed to do to win this war. We're trying to protect American people, protect our interests, protect the future. This is really, think like World War II, World War I. It's this tiny little viruses invading us, but, make no mistake, this is like a war, an alien invasion.
Sobering. Once again, that was Paul Solomon talking with Harvard economist Ken Rogoff.
You're listening to the PBS NewsHour on WAMU 88.5.
I'm Meghna Chakrabarty. Coming up on the next On Point, binge watching while social distancing. What shows are you binging now if you're stuck at home? What favorite movies are you turning to? We'll share the critics' choices of movies and TV to watch as you adjust to spending more time inside. That's coming up on the next On Point from NPR.
Listen tonight from 10 to 11 on WAMU 88.5.
My name is Matthew from Washington, D.C., and I'm a member of WAMU. I highly recommend doing the monthly contribution. I think the monthly contribution is a great way to kind of set it and forget it. For me, that actually works. There's something great about not having to wait for the pledge drive and just knowing it's in motion and that you're making a difference every single month, every single week with your donation. Join me as a sustaining member at WAMU.org.
We now return to the PBS NewsHour.
We take a small step back now from our coverage of the coronavirus outbreak for the first in a series of stories from Jeffrey Brown about Mexico's vibrant arts and culture scene. The 2018 film Roma, set in Mexico, won many awards and acclaim, but it also sparked a national debate about racial and social inequities. The woman, at its heart, has carved out a new off-screen role as an advocate for change. This is part of our ongoing arts and culture coverage, Canvas.
Oscar Night 2019. 25-year-old Yalitza Aparicio from the Mexican state of Oaxaca made history as the first indigenous woman from the Americas to vie for the Best Actress award. Not so many years before, she'd seen a far less glamorous side of life.
Cuando me encontraba con la realidad de buscar un trabajo.
When I found myself in the reality of looking for a job, many places would close doors on me because of my physical appearance. The problem was the color of my skin. In many cases, it's also about your socioeconomic level.
In the film Roma, Aparicio played Cleo, the live-in maid in an affluent Mexico City household in the 1970s. Cleo is relied upon by the mother, loved by the children. Filmmaker Alfonso Cuarón, who won the Oscar for Best Director, based the story on his own upbringing. But the class and race differences between family and worker are obvious. The casually dismissive treatment glaring. Aparicio, who studied to be a teacher, had never acted and auditioned on a whim. But Cuarón saw something in her. In Mexico City recently, she told me she drew on her mother's experience.
From the beginning, I took it as a personal issue because my mother was a domestic worker, and I think it's important that she too knew her rights. But I realized that she was not the only woman who was unaware of what she was deserving of by law. So I think there's a chance to lift our voice and raise awareness.
Hola a todos, buenas tardes. From film star to international ambassador. Since Roma's release, Aparicio has used her new celebrity to become a leading activist and advocate on behalf of indigenous culture and the rights of domestic workers.
Para mí quiere decir que
For me, it means that I'm giving a voice and visibility to causes that are correct in my opinion or that are necessary in society. I enjoy fighting for my indigenous community because I feel proud of who I am and think that we shouldn't lose that pride and identity.
The first thing I saw in the film was that the situation of the domestic workers in Mexico in the 70s to the 2000s had not changed at all.
Marcelina Bautista came from Oaxaca to Mexico City at age 14 to work as a maid, a normal path for girls in her village. Many years later, she founded Mexico's first ever union of domestic workers, and on this day led a workshop to educate her members, who spoke of abuses they faced.
It is a sector in the labor world that presents many forms of discrimination and abuse and violation of human rights. Many are not paid a salary that they deserve. They live in a room of a house that's in bad shape, very humid, no lock on the door. These female workers have been hit.
But there has been change. Last year, Mexico's Congress passed a new law that for the first time gives domestic workers basic labor rights, including a minimum wage, retirement benefits, and workplace protections. Bautista says the struggle now is to raise awareness among workers and employers and ensure government enforcement. And she credits Roma and the debate it sparked with jump-starting long-delayed action.
Honestly, I felt very powerful using the movie to tell lawmakers that they are still not doing their part, to tell employers that the situation remains the same and they can no longer feel like they are doing us a favor by giving us a job.
Yalitza Aparicio, Bautista says, played a special role through her own personal story.
Yalitza somos muchas. We are many Yalitzas. And Yalitza, when she is in a space speaking on behalf of people or issues, I do think she represents us very well.
Aparicio is also having another kind of impact here in changing perceptions of beauty. Vogue Mexico put her on its cover, a first for an indigenous woman. Light-skinned models and personalities dominate the cultural landscape. Vogue Mexico editor Carla Martinez de Salas.
What we have seen in magazines historically is, this kind of European American ideal of beauty.
Yeah, which Yalitza Aparicio is not.
Which Yalitza is not. I think it's changing little by little.
With the film Roma, Martinez de Salas saw an opportunity.
I heard of the movie, and she was, the first indigenous woman to take on this role. Mm-hmm. And so I did think, why not celebrate this? So yes, a big part of it was to break this kind of stereotype that you think of, what is a Vogue cover girl.
The cover led to other photo shoots, and Aparicio also became the face of a Head & Shoulders ad campaign. There was praise and excitement, but also a nasty, often racist social media backlash filled with ugly comments.
We still have a ways to go as far as even the ideals of Mexican beauty. In October, we did an indigenous beauty story celebrating the beauty of Mexico.
Yeah.
And
but that's still unusual,
yes,
you're saying.
Yes, but I do feel like it's something that we have to push forward.
Las personas aún siguen encerradas.
People are still prisoners to social circles where appearances and socioeconomic status matter. I really think this is something that should already be changing.
Yalitza Aparicio says she now wants to balance acting and activism. One of her projects is a push for inclusion of indigenous languages in the education system. Languages being lost, students falling behind.
El trabajo que a mí me corresponde es...
My job is to give visibility to these communities and talk about them wherever I go. We're working sector by sector.
It sounds very difficult to change a large society with a long history.
Sí, realmente suena muy difícil.
Yes, it sounds difficult, and it is difficult to change something that people have been used to for years. But that's what it's about. It's about telling people this isn't normal and they shouldn't be used to it.
Are you happy with the way your life has changed and what it is now?
Sí, estoy muy contenta.
Yes, I am very happy. Everything that I'm doing with that intention, with that affection, and therefore I am enjoying it. And I hope to continue enjoying it for many years. And that it's not just me, but that maybe in the next years, there are others fighting for these causes with me.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Jeffrey Brown in Mexico City.
As COVID-19 continues to overwhelm healthcare systems around the world, here in the U.S. there is increasing concern hospitals won't have enough supplies, staff, and beds to treat those who become seriously ill. In tonight's Brief but Spectacular, we visit Dr. Karen Kinsel. She's the only physician in Fort Gaines, Georgia, where she serves her town's 3,000 residents.
I think a lot of people don't understand that not everyone in America has the ability to go to the doctor. Fort Gaines is in Clay County in southwest Georgia. We have about 3,000 people. About 40% of the people are below the poverty level. I've been the only doctor here for 15 years. Next closest hospital and doctor in Georgia is 20 miles away. I've been called the last doctor in Clay County. So when I die or leave or retire or whatever, does that mean that there really won't be a doctor here? It was not built as a doctor's office and really shouldn't be a doctor's office. It was built as a Tasty Freeze in the 1950s. It has tremendous leaks in the roof. We literally keep out trash cans to catch the water when it rains. We currently use the former freezer as a drug storage area. It's horrible, but we really don't have the resources to do anything different. And there really aren't any of the buildings in the county that are acceptable. There was one pharmacy in Clay County for the last 30 or 40 years, and it closed a year and a half ago. Right now, it's about a 30-mile round trip to pick up a pill. And as an internist, where our tools are pills, this becomes a very serious situation. Many of the specialists in this area won't even accept Medicaid patients. We frequently get involved in internal medicine, specialty care, endocrinology, rheumatology. That's absolutely outside my scope of expertise. I could probably get sued for it if something untoward happened. But this is the only way we know of to get people that care. We averaged between 25 and 30 patients a day. Often people don't have access to transportation. People struggle every day to have food and gas. We ask for $10. If they can't afford that, we see them anyway. We don't turn anyone away. There's no point of me spending my time out here if I can't go ahead and see everyone who needs to be seen. The pervasive poverty just affects people's view of the world. We recently had a grant and gave cameras to high school kids and asked them what they want to take pictures of. And what they chose were abandoned houses because that's what represented Clay County to them. You know, like all doctors, I went to medical school, worked really hard, paid a lot of money to learn how to use the technology to help people live healthy, long lives. To be in a place like this where you know what needs to happen and you simply cannot get that for that person, that's devastating. You know, I have very deep roots in this community at this point. I know these people. To just up and leave would be very personally devastating for me, and I think would adversely affect the health care of people I see. I think I save lives by being here. And, I mean, that's tremendously rewarding. I mean, what bigger high could you have? My name is Dr. Karen Kinsel. This is my brief but spectacular take on being the only doctor in a poor rural area.
Dr. Kinsel, everybody like her. They are our heroes. And you can find all of our brief but spectacular segments online at pbs.org/newshour/brief. On the NewsHour online, all of the turmoil in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic is a recipe for stress and can take a toll on our mental health. We explore why and what you can do to take care of yourself on our website, pbs.org/newshour. And that is the NewsHour for tonight. Don't forget to tune in to our special Confronting Coronavirus tonight at 8 p.m. on your PBS station and streaming online. I'm Judy Woodruff. Join us online and again here tomorrow evening. For all of us at the PBS NewsHour, thank you, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by...
Before we talk about your investments, what's new?
Well, Audrey's expecting.
Twins.
grandparents.
We want to put money aside for them, so change in plans.
All right, let's see what we can adjust.
Maybe closer to the twins.
Change in plans.
Okay.
Mom, are you painting again? You could sell these.
Let me guess. Change in plans?
At Fidelity, a change in plans is always part of the plan.
American Cruise Lines. BNSF Railway. Consumer Cellular. The Ford Foundation, working with visionaries on the front lines of social change worldwide.
And by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, supporting science, technology, and improved economic performance and financial literacy in the 21st century.
And with the ongoing support of these institutions. And friends of the NewsHour. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
There is no parallel for this election in 2020.
The entire point is to get past the headlines, to get past the name calling.
We can go deeper into topics. Everything isn't necessarily red or blue.
We need to understand what's going on. We need to go behind the story and under the story.
Not just to find out what happened, but why it matters.
2020 will be a political roller coaster, but viewers can count on PBS to be there every step of the way.
WAMU is my home for local, regional, and national news. To have a station that gets as big as world news and financial news, sports news, and then gets all the way down to news about the metro and any weather updates with the Capital Weather Gang here in the area is really fascinating and awesome, and it's definitely a blessing that we have that available to us. My name is Tyler from Washington, D.C., and that's why I'm a member of WAMU.
This is WAMU Washington. We're your listener-supported NPR news station from American University in HD at 88.5, at WRAU 88.3 Ocean City, on your smart speaker and online at WAMU.org. It's 10 o'clock.
Major funding for On Point is provided by GEICO, offering car insurance as well as services for homeowners and renters insurance through the GEICO Insurance Agency. Additional information can be found at geico.com or 1-800-947-AUTO.
From NPR and WBUR Boston, I'm Meghna Chakrabarty. This is On Point. So you're spending a lot more time at home than you expected. Are you binge watching your favorite shows now? Maybe even binge watching while FaceTiming? A way to keep connected even as we're asked to keep apart. I recently rewatched all of Hip Hop Evolution. I just needed that inspiration of a series of brilliant creative geniuses making amazing music. Perhaps you're turning to TV comfort food, those tried and true sitcoms that bring levity and laughs when you most need it. We want to know what you're tuning into in the midst of this global pandemic. Up next on Point, what we're watching now. First, the news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. The State Department is warning Americans not to travel internationally and saying U.S. citizens who are currently abroad should make plans immediately to return home unless they plan to remain overseas. NPR's David Schaper reports the upgrade to Level 4 travel warning is another blow to airlines already reeling from the coronavirus outbreak.
Airlines in the U.S. had already eliminated most of their international flights, and this latest escalation by the State Department
to apply its most dire warning to travel globally is unprecedented. It will likely lead to a near-complete halt in international flights, although some passenger airlines say they will continue a few international flights to carry cargo only. The industry says the drop in passenger demand right now is worse than the slumps after September 11th and the Great Recession combined. And the airlines have been pressing Congress and the White House for more than $50 billion in aid. The proposal unveiled by Senate Republicans late Thursday includes that much money, but for loans only, no direct grants. David Shaper, NPR News.
California Governor Gavin Newsom says the state projects 56% of California's population will be infected with the coronavirus over an 8-week period. That would be more than 22 million people. The estimate was included in a letter Newsom sent to President Trump dated Wednesday. That letter requested the president deploy the Navy's hospital ship Mercy to be stationed at the Port of Los Angeles through the beginning of September to help treat non-coronavirus cases. Newsom has now issued a statewide order for people to stay at home. The administration has canceled plans to hold the next G7 summit meeting at Camp David in June because of the coronavirus. As NPR's Franco Ordonez explains, the White House says President Trump will hold a video conference instead.
White House spokesman Judd Deere says the decision was made in order to allow each country to focus all of its resources on responding to the health and economic challenges of COVID-19. National Economic Council Director Larry Kudlow has contacted his counterparts from the other 6 economic powers, Italy, Japan, Canada, France, Germany, Britain, as well as the European Union. President Trump this week hosted a video conference for the leaders to discuss a global response to the coronavirus. The White House says it will follow up with more video teleconferences in April and May. Franco Ordonez, NPR News, the White House.
The coronavirus pandemic that is sweeping the globe is having a disastrous effect on the nation's employment picture. From historic lows, the number of out-of-work Americans is expected to soar. Tens of thousands of people have flooded state unemployment websites across the country. In the week ending March 4th, the number of people seeking unemployment aid rose by 70,000 to 281,000. Most analysts expect those numbers will soar in coming weeks. Stocks gained ground today, closing modestly higher. The Dow was up 188 points. You're listening to NPR. Automaker Ford says it is suspending its dividend as the company looks to preserve cash with falling vehicle sales and production facilities idled, at least for the time being. Like many other companies, Ford is also withdrawing its financial guidance for the year. The cash the company saves will be used to offset the impact on working capital due to factory shutdowns as a result of the coronavirus. Ford's move is likely to be followed by others. A Lebanese-American man detained in Lebanon for 6 months has been released from jail and evacuated to the U.S. NPR's Alice Fordham reports the release comes after intense negotiations.
Amr Fakouri was arrested after arriving in Lebanon last September, his first visit in more than 2 decades. He was charged in a military court with crimes including murder and torture, alleged to have taken place in a prison run by Israeli-backed Lebanese forces in the 1980s and 90s. His lawyer denied the charges. During his detention, Senators Jean Shaheen and Ted Cruz had introduced a sanctions bill targeting Lebanese officials involved in his arrest. Now he's been released by Lebanese authorities, who said the statute of limitations on the charges had expired. American diplomats arranged a medical evacuation, and President Trump thanked the Lebanese government for working with the U.S. on the matter. Alice Fordham, NPR News, Beirut.
Crude oil futures prices, after falling roughly 24% yesterday, rebounded in the other direction after an announcement by the U.S. Energy Department. It plans to initially buy up to 30 million barrels of oil for the nation's strategic reserves. Oil was up $4.85 a barrel to end the session at $25.22 a barrel on the New York Mercantile Exchange. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Pew Charitable Trusts, working to preserve wilderness, restore biodiversity, and increase understanding of ocean ecology. More information is available at pewtrusts.org. And Americans for the Arts.
Radio is a 24/7 business. No matter when you tune in, your contribution makes a difference for the listener-supported service that you rely on. Join us as a member with your gift tonight. Click the beating heart at WAMU.org, and thanks. On Point is recorded, so we're not taking any phone calls.
From NPR and WBUR Boston, I'm Meghna Chakrabarty, and this is On Point. So you're home a lot more now, maybe working from home, maybe your kids are out of school, maybe you find yourself streaming a whole lot of TV shows and movies. Like listener David from Saratoga Springs, New York. Why is he binging on that place where everybody knows your name?
Because it just makes me happy to think about the 80s and think about people getting together, and so it's just a good break from everything going on.
Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You want to be where you can see our troubles are all the same. You want to be where everybody knows your name.
Come on, that made you smile, didn't it? At least for a second. It made me smile. This hour On Point, binge watching in the time of COVID-19. Well, we're joined today by Kristen Meinzer. She's with us from New York City. She's a culture critic and co-host of the By the Book podcast and author of the new book, How to Be Fine, What We Learned from Living by the Rules of 50 Self-Help Books. Kristen, welcome to On Point.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Meghna. It's so nice to meet you.
It's great to meet you down the line here. Also with us is Kate Hagan. She joins us from Los Angeles via Skype. She's director of community at The Blacklist, an annual survey of Hollywood executives' favorite unproduced screenplays that was founded back in 2005. They subsequently are been the force behind 400 titles that have been produced since then. So an awesome group. She's also host of the brand new Blacklist podcast, which launched on Luminary just yesterday. So Kate, welcome to you.
Hello there. Thanks so much for having me.
So hello to both of you, and thank you so much. We decided that we'd reached the point in the week where we needed to talk about stuff that was actually happening inside people's homes that would hopefully make us all smile a little bit. So Kristen, let me just actually hear from both of you. How have you been doing, Kristen?
Oh, I feel very lucky because the kind of work that I can do, I'm able to do from my home. And I just, there are a lot of people who don't have that choice right now. And I know that even though I feel cooped up some of the time, and I know a lot of listeners right now feel cooped up, we're the lucky ones. We're very lucky. We have things like TVs. We have things like radio. We have moments like this where we can hear other voices. So I actually feel really fortunate right now.
Okay, good. So things going well and you're healthy as well, which is important. And Kate, how about you? How have you been doing?
Yeah, very much echoing Kristen, just feeling, the sort of privilege that comes with the ability to work from home. I know so many people who are not able to work right now for a variety of reasons, and my heart just really goes out to them. So really just trying to keep that kind of gratefulness in mind in the moments when I do feel a little bit stir crazy. Mostly I'm just very tired of my own cooking at this point.
Well, it's a chance to get better at it. I'm thinking there's a lot of skills that I'm not so good at that I need to be working on while I have the opportunity. But okay, so what are you watching? Kate, let me start with you. What have you been turning to in the past week?
Pretty hilariously, I have been able to watch one thing and one thing only, and that is episodes of ER, which was my favorite television show when I was a kid. And there is something so comforting about being able to go into the world of County General for 45 minutes, see some medical catastrophes, and see everything get solved and a neat little bow put on it. And I'm just living for the interpersonal drama. It's funny, I feel like there is a sort of generational divide between Grey's Anatomy and ER. I'm very staunchly ER. But I have watched 2 seasons of ER in the last 10 days, which are network seasons. So it's like 45 episodes. So that's where I'm at currently.
George Clooney helps, I have to say, right?
Yes, he really does.
Okay. That's a surprise. I didn't think that ER would come up on this list, but really interesting. Okay, Kristen, what are you watching?
Well, I got to say, I love that answer, Kate, because I know a lot of people right now who are also consuming medical catastrophe stories where there's a solution at the end, because it really speaks to the panic that people are feeling, but it also speaks to that need for a solution. So I love that Kate said that. But I, myself, am choosing to mostly watch light, frothy comedies. Your listener already mentioned Cheers, but I love other ensemble comedies from right now also. I like Superstore. I like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which, is still a pretty recent show. And what I like about all of these shows is we build relationships over many seasons with the same people. They're multicultural, and much like the rest of us, they're also trapped indoors. If you look closely at these shows, it's like, here are a bunch of people who are also trapped indoors every single episode, but they are just having a great time. The shows are frothy. For the most part, they're forgettable. It doesn't matter if next week I don't remember what happened on the episode last week, because the show's going to be fine, even if I, have some blank spots in my memory. And I think those are great shows to watch right now.
Yeah, the trapped indoors part, and most often in, say, if it's based in New York, in an impossible New York apartment also.
Yes, absolutely.
But the idea about building relationships, talk to me more about that, because it's something that I feel, as we're asked to stay apart right now, it's really important. And even if that relationship is with characters who we already know because we watched them 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Yes. I think that those relationships, especially for people who are feeling quite alone right now, I have a number of single friends who have no roommates. They're feeling rather alone right now, despite all of our best efforts to stay connected on FaceTime and other ways. There are all those hours of the day where they're not with anybody else right now. And being able to watch, just a flashback a little bit, watch Estelle Getty on the Golden Girls say something snide that she's going to say, or watch Betty White say something that sounds not very smart on the Golden Girls. I think that those moments are really enjoyable. And especially with those flashback shows where you feel like you already had a relationship with these characters 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Kate, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of reason why I've returned to ER specifically. I'm just really enjoying luxuriating in all of those interpersonal relationships and details. And yeah, I think that's the real beauty of television, is that you do get a chance to build relationships with these characters over multiple seasons. You do get to invest in their lives in a way that you don't necessarily get to invest in their lives in a feature film. So I think there's a lot to be said for TV, particularly at this time, being of a great comfort to folks.
Okay, interesting. We will talk about movies, though, a little later in the show. And folks, this hour, we are talking about what you are binge watching now, as we're all dealing with living in a time of a global pandemic. Kristen Meinzer joins us, and so does Kate Hagen. You heard a couple of the shows that they're turning to at the moment. What are you watching? We're at 1-800-423-8255. That's 800-423-TALK. Now, I want to play a moment from a show that comes up a lot, I think, in people's binge-watching list, or at least some folks. This is a clip from season 1 of The Great British Baking Show. In the UK, of course, it's called The Great British Bake Off. You're going to listen to judges Mary Berry and Paul Hollywood, again from season 1, inspect contestants' best attempts at a Croatian cinnamon swirl bread.
Let's move on to number 2, which is very interesting. Royal icing on the top, no glaze on top of the loaf, massively underproofed. Raw inside, that is going to have a few issues.
You can tell as you cut through that's royal icing because it's all breaking up.
So that's a clip from season 1 of The Great British Baking Show. And fans of the show will know I had to say it's season 1 because Mary Berry is no longer on the current iteration of The Great British Baking Show. But Kristen, let me turn to you about this. I love this program. And in fact, it's funny, this cut, you hear Paul being mean, which he is, but he's not like Gordon Ramsay mean. And I think people are really drawn to the show because of actually the other aspect of it, which is people helping each other out, like average folks struggling at an oven or a stove. And when like something catastrophically goes wrong with a cake, you see folks rallying to help each other. I mean, it's actually a very loving program.
Oh, so much so. It's completely the opposite of all the reality shows like Survivor, where people are not there to make friends. On The Great British Baking Show, everybody there wants to make a friend. They all become friends with each other. They all love each other. When somebody gets voted off, everybody cries and hugs that person like, no, we're so sorry you have to leave. It is such a joy to watch. And then, of course, there's all the jargon, which you heard there, proving this, something has a soggy bottom. It's cute just learning all these different new words, at least new for me as a non-baker. And it just has a pace that's very slow and soothing. It can just feel like there's somebody else in your house, and if you're feeling alone, or it can also just slow your mind. You know, a lot of media nowadays goes so fast. It's like at a breakneck speed. There's a cut here, an edit there. And the Great British Baking Show is not like that. It's nice and slow. It's almost meditative and soothing to watch. And then just to see all these people who are so kind to each other at a moment like this, it's great to see people kind to each other.
I completely agree. And I'm also, every time I watch it, I'm like, these folks are amateurs because what they make seems kind of amazing to me. I mean, Kate, what do you think?
These restrictions for the government shutdown.
Yes. Let's remember that Italy right now is in shutdown. Only groceries and pharmacies and other shops selling essentials are open. You cannot travel around the country unless it's for work, and there is severe restriction on all movements and on all economic activities. Most factories and other plants have closed. So the government is thinking of imposing even harsher restrictions, for example, just going out once per day for food shopping and all that, but it's not clear whether this will be enough to slow down the growth of the virus in some regions. The situation is particularly worrying in the north. There are reports of hospitals really at capacity, not enough ICU, not enough intensive care units for all the people coming in with the virus. And one thing that is not clear is why the death rate in Italy has been so high compared to China and most other countries where the virus has grown exponentially.
In the UK, Prime Minister Johnson says they can turn the tide against the virus by June. That would be just 12 weeks away. How does he intend to do that when we're seeing even his own cabinet reeling from some virus symptoms?
Yes, this is really a complicated challenge for the UK. At the beginning, there was this idea of letting the virus spread more or less freely and just focus on those who were falling ill, sort of trying to get what is called herd immunity. Right now, the idea is going back. They are closing schools, and they have talks of closing pubs and restaurants in London. But what the government has tried to do is two things. The first one is reassuring people there's not going to be any lockdown of London. London is not going to be isolated from the rest of the country, because this had really sent markets down in a tailspin in the day. And it is unleashing a massive stimulus, £350 billion, and the Bank of England has cut rates to a record low. This is a massive stimulus for the UK, which, let's remember, is also dealing.
Now, in Spain, the death toll from the coronavirus has increased dramatically and now stands at 803. The number of confirmed cases has also risen rapidly to over 17,000. More than 900 people are in intensive care. Spain has been under lockdown since Saturday, with residents required to stay in their homes for all but essential travel. Spain's neighbour Portugal has also declared a state of emergency to fight the pandemic. The new measures allow the government to restrict movement of people, ban protests and social or religious meetings, and temporarily suspend the rights of key workers to strike. Portugal has 785 confirmed cases of the coronavirus so far, with 3 reported deaths. But now to Italy. There, the number of deaths from the coronavirus has surpassed those in China. In Italy, 3,405 have now died from COVID-19, a rise of 427 in just 24 hours. The total number of cases has risen to above 41,000. Italy's outbreak came to light in the north of the country in February. We report now from Bergamo in Lombardy, in northern Italy, one of Europe's wealthiest regions. It finds itself at the epicenter of the country's outbreak. And a warning, my report contains some distressing images. Bergamo, once upon a time, just a month ago, still a byword for northern Italian charm. Today, in terms of untimely deaths, perhaps the most dangerous place on earth. At night, these army trucks ferry the dead to other towns where they can be cremated. And the people trying to stop this from happening are the volunteers battling to save lives and their own town. Bergamo alone has already had 4,000 cases with 400 deaths. They don't want 84-year-old Teresina to be the next. She needs oxygen, which is already in short supply. And her carer describes how things have got worse in the last 24 hours. Her carer is struggling.
La mia famiglia è giù in Bolivia, marito, figlia,
Sì. Io sono qua giorno notte con la signora. E mio marito mi aveva detto, prendi le tue cose e torna qua, mi ha detto.
But simply to move Teresina from one room to another and put her in her own bed is a Herculean task. With the hospitals full, she needs to stay at home. Then the requisite deep clean, as if your life depended on it, because it might. During a short break, Samantha says it's heartbreaking to take patients to hospital and then watch their families as doctors decide if they can help them or not.
C'è il parente dietro che magari ti dice fate qualcosa, portamelo via, sta morendo, mi sta morendo davanti agli occhi, portamelo via, perché non fate niente. C'è chi lo supera, c'è chi è 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 volte inizia un attimino a vacillare, perché fondamentalmente noi siamo tutti volontari, non lo facciamo di professione, non siamo nati infermieri.
As many as 10 people are dying every day in a small city of 120,000. Health workers compare it to a war or earthquake zone.
E devi fare una scelta, un triage, quindi selezioni chi cammina, lo fai uscire, lo raggruppi tutto in un posto e sono i verdi. Chi sai che non ce la può fare, non ti metti a rianimarlo perché sai già che quello è spacciato, quindi quello è nero. Devi selezionare chi ha la possibilità di sopravvivere. Adesso negli ospedali stanno facendo così praticamente.
On their way to the next visit, written on someone's embroidered handkerchief, if we get through this, a big thank you. We will get through this. Funeral parlours are overrun. Churches have been banned from holding funerals, but have been helping to store the bodies before cremation. A month ago, the local newspaper had a single page for obituaries. Yesterday, there were 10 pages of names, but these are burials without mourners, behind closed cemetery gates. For the volunteers, more deep cleaning. The next case involves Claudio Travelli, in his late 50s, who should be going to hospital, but the health workers worry that he won't survive the wait until a bed and a ventilator are freed up. So the decision is to keep him at home, in his own bed. His wife and daughter look on, helpless. Exhausted, they have one final job tonight before doing it all again tomorrow.
Questa persona aveva chiamato il 112 alle 20:23 e siamo stati attivati adesso che sono le 22:30 più o meno. E di solito un codice giallo come questo viene processato in massimo 10 minuti, invece qui i tempi d'attesa si sono dilatati come...
Their final case is 41-year-old Antonio Amato. His wife and sons watch anxiously from a distance as their father is carried down the stairs to the ambulance. At least he's been deemed young enough to get a bed in intensive care. But they cannot know when they'll see him next.
But it's not all bad news. China has today reported there have been no locally transmitted infections at all today, for the first time since the virus was detected 3 months ago. But across the world, other countries are desperately trying to contain the spread as best they can. And in America, President Trump has said he would slash red tape to allow existing drugs to be tested and used in the fight against COVID-19. Siobhan Kennedy reports now on the latest from China and from across the world.
Wuhan residents in partial lockdown cheer medical staff as they board buses to go home, back to their families after being deployed to the epicentre of the virus. Months after COVID-19 gripped the city, killing thousands in the province. Today, for the first time, Chinese state media says no new local cases of the disease were reported. Wuhan is still designated high risk, but residents now free to wander around their compounds to deliver food and take advantage of the rare fresh air with factories still closed, while the endless sanitizing continues. Across China, the government says there are 34 new cases detected in people arriving from abroad, raising fears of reinfection. This woman says the situation is going in a good direction. Not so, says President Trump.
As far as believing what they're putting out now, I hope it's true.
Who used his daily press conference to once again point the finger at China.
People would have known about it. It could have been stopped in place. It could have been stopped right where it came from, China. It could have been stopped in its tracks. Unfortunately, they didn't decide to make it public.
The president said he would cut red tape to help develop vaccines and therapies as fast as possible, though nothing is imminent. And the number of confirmed cases in America at more than 10,000, with 160 dead, is soaring. In the virus hotspot of Washington state, Seattle Airport was like a ghost town. Its economy decimated as restaurants, bars and travel networks all shut down. And nationally, new figures today showed a sharp spike in unemployment claims as fears of a depression-like era loom. And in Australia, the Prime Minister followed President Trump's lead with drastic travel restrictions.
A travel ban will be placed on all non-residents, non-Australian citizens coming to Australia.
The country's national carrier, Qantas, is temporarily laying off about 20,000 employees, two-thirds of its workforce, as the virus takes hold. In Africa, countries like Kenya have so far experienced fewer cases, but they're disinfecting, closing schools and banning public gatherings. And people entering the country will be arrested if they fail to observe 14 days of self-isolation. The World Health Organization warning all African nations today to wake up to the threat and prepare for the worst.
Siobhan Kennedy reporting. Now, earlier I spoke to Ian Golden. He's Professor of Globalisation and Development at the University of Oxford, and I began by asking him, was a pandemic like the coronavirus an inevitable consequence of globalisation?
I'm afraid it was. We are hyper-connected, and the super spreaders of the goods of globalization, like major airport hubs, are unfortunately also the super spreaders of the bads, like pandemics, in the same way that major financial centers were the super spreaders of not only financial flows that led to investment, but also the financial crisis. And our cyber systems spread systemic risk through cyber viruses. So it was inevitable.
What does history, therefore, tell us in wishing to combat this thing?
History tells us that we have to act cooperatively. Pandemics are very different to other threats like climate change or antibiotic resistance or financial crises in that they really can originate anywhere in the world. The poorest countries, slums near airports can spread viruses around the world in a very, very short period of time. And that means that we need to act cooperatively. We need a monitoring system that is global. We need a rapid response system that's global. We need to work on vaccines collectively.
Well, working collectively demands leadership. Where's that going to come from?
Well, we have two options. We have an option that looks like the aftermath of the First World War, where
I am going to increase the density control today, no more than 25%.
Want to be?
I think we'll go a long way. Again, we'll reassess as the situation goes on if that should be extended or not. Number of positive cases, total positive 4,000, number of new positive 1,769. You see additional counties that are being added to counties that have cases. The spread mirrors what's happening in the country. Just as the spread has gone through all states, the spread is going through our counties. It was downstate first. It's now moving upstate. New York now has 2,000 cases. Washington State, 1,100 cases. Washington State had cases earlier because it went through a nursing home, if you remember. But New York State has more cases than Washington State, more cases than any state in the nation. And I've made that point to the federal government and the president, and he understands that. If there's a state that needs help, the state, by the number of cases, is New York. In terms of testing, we have tested now 22,000. We tested 7,500 people last night. Why are you seeing the numbers go up? Because you are taking more tests. People see those numbers go up, they get nervous, they panic, oh, look at how many more people have the virus. That's not how many more people have the virus. You're just taking more tests, so you're finding more positives. There are thousands and thousands of people who have the virus who we're not testing. There are thousands and thousands of people who had the virus before we started testing. There are thousands and thousands of people who had the virus and who resolved and never knew they had the virus. We're still testing because you want to find those positive cases so you can track them down, isolate people, and stop the spread. But you can't watch these numbers like the stock market and say, well, that's the indicator of anything other than the indicator of how many tests we're taking. It is good news that we're now up to 7,500 tests. We were at one time doing 200 tests per day, just to put that 7,500 in focus. So that's a tremendous increase in the number of tests, and you're going to see the numbers go up. The hospitalization rate is very relevant because, remember, this is all about the flow into the healthcare system. So 777 out of 4,152. Perspective. We know the virus. We know what it does. We know who it hurts. We know who it affects. Johns Hopkins, since day one, has tracked this virus through China. 222,000 cases, 9,000 deaths, 84,000 recoveries, 129,000 pending. One last point. We talk about this as a government response. The federal government's doing this, state government is doing this, government. This manifests on a number of levels, and the government response is obviously very important. But the impact, I think, is greater and probably greatest as a social phenomenon and on people and on families. This is tremendously disruptive on all sorts of levels. It came out of the blue. For me, in New York, it reminds me of 9/11, where one moment, which was inconceivable, just changed everything, changed your perspective on the world, changed your perspective on safety. Children who were young at that time, but of school age, watched on TV. They didn't know if their parents were coming home. I think it changed their whole outlook on life after 9/11. This is a situation like that. It's obviously totally different magnitude, but it's like that. It's a moment that just changes your whole life. Yesterday you were going to work and you were going to go to the office party. Today you're at home and the kids are at home and you're worried about health and you're worried about your job and you're worried about economics and you're dealing with personal issues and you're dealing with family issues, and it's all happening at once. And then you turn on the TV and there's all this different information and nobody can tell you if this is going to be 30 days or 60 days or 4 months or 5 months or 9 months. The stress, the emotion is just incredible, and rightfully so. It is a situation that is one of the most disruptive that I have seen, and it will change almost everything going forward. It will. That is a fact. It's not your perception. It's not just you. It's all of us. And it's true. And it's real. Nobody can tell you when this is going to end. Nobody can tell you. I talked to all the experts. Nobody can say 2 months, 4 months, 9 months. Nobody. It's hard living your life with that big a question mark out there. Nobody can tell you when you go back to work. People can tell you that it's not just you economically, it's everyone. Take comfort in that. Federal government is actually acting on an economic package. But it's true. Having your family all together is a beautiful thing. It's also different for a lot of people, especially for a prolonged period of time. So these are major shifts in life and in the most emotional, stressful conditions that you can imagine. And I think my own personal advice is understand it for what it is. And that it's not just you. It has changed everything. And it will for the foreseeable future. And think through how you're going to deal with it and what it means. And even try to find a positive in it, right? It's a very negative circumstance. But you're going to have time on your hands. You're going to have time with your family. You're going to have time at home. In this busy, hurry-up world, all of a sudden somebody said, okay, you have a couple of months where you're going to be home with the family, no work, you work from home, but it's a totally different situation. How do you use that? How do you adjust? It's not going to be done overnight, but it is something that everybody has to think through. My last point is to the younger people in our great state and in our great society. And that's why I invited our special guest here today, Michaela. My grandfather, Andrea, my grandfather on my father's side, his name was Andrea. I'm named for my grandfather, Andrew, Italian-American immigrant. When I was young-ish, when I was like 16, 17, 18, and I would do something that he didn't like, he would just look at me and he would say, "We grow too soon old and too late smart." And I would say, "What does that mean, Grandpa? Is that a criticism?" We grow too soon old, too late smart. These pictures of young people on beaches, these videos of young people saying, "This is my spring break, you know, I'm out to party, this is my time to party." This is so unintelligent and reckless, I can't even begin to express it. Now, I had a conversation with my daughter about this. I'm governor of the state. I can order a quarantine of 10,000 people, but I can't tell my daughter to do anything, all right? And I have to be careful because there's almost an inverse response to a direct action. But I did say to all three of them, from soon as they could crawl, I used one line. What is the one line I used to say?
Risk reward.
Yeah. Risk reward. Risk reward. Just pose the question. I couldn't offer an answer because whatever answer I would offer, they would do the other. Risk reward. It makes no sense to go expose yourself to these conditions and expose other people. Expose other people. Michaela wanted to take, first of all, Michaela was graduating this year, and her school closed to online courses, so she's not going to have the graduation. We're going to have a big party at the appropriate time. We don't know what that time is going to be, if it's going to be 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 9 months, but at the first opportunity, we're going to have a big party, so that's going to happen. But she was deprived of the last year and the last few months of college. which I'm sure were a very intense study period, and that's what she's deprived of, that intense study period of those last few weeks. I remember those last few weeks, a lot of studying. But that's a shift in life. But she was going to take a vacation on spring break and go with friends and take a trip and risk reward. And luckily, she made the right decision, and I'm proud of her for that. No prompting from me besides the question, risk reward. What these people are doing is the risk does not justify the reward. They're putting themselves at risk. Young people can get coronavirus. That's one of the other myths. Young people don't get it. Young people do get it. And young people can transfer it. And you can wind up infecting someone and possibly killing someone if you're exposed to it. Risk reward. Questions, comments?
What's your plan for the MTA? They asked the feds for a $4 billion bailout. What if they can't get that from the feds? Will the state step in?
The economic consequences here are for the MTA, for the state budget, for county budgets, town budgets, village budgets, all the public authorities. It's just a big question mark. They've all lost tremendous revenues, and we're going to have to figure out, as a nation, how to deal with this. The ridership is down on the MTA, and the revenue is down on the MTA, and say hello to every other public transit system in this United States of America. So it's going to have to be a national response.
So you don't want to shut down transportation, but how is that possible if the trains can't run and if the MTA can't make payroll? Is there any plan right now that you guys are going through to save the MTA?
The MTA will continue running. They're an essential service on the essential service list. And the revenues, we're going to have to make do. Rob, do you have anything that you want to add?
They're looking at, so right now we're looking at the ridership, right? Ridership is down in all of the systems, right? But the workers are there. The workers are running the trains are running on time, and New York City still has, right? There are still some businesses and essential services that are flowing. So the MTA is part of bringing people back and forth. So right now we're looking at that, but every transit system in the nation is facing the same reality. We're looking at the MTA as well. So this is part of the discussions that we're having with the legislature right now. We're looking at as the governor mentioned, the entire budget is impacted right? So we're going to have flexibility in the budget to be able to prioritize certain services over others. As the governor indicated, the MTA is an essential service for New York City.
Also, guys, remember all these broad statements. We have to run a government, we have to run and service a society, right? We need the healthcare system up and running. Doctors have to get to work, nurses have to get to work, healthcare workers have to get to work. We need police, we need fire, we need bus drivers, we need daycare workers. All those functions have to happen. So we need a transportation system because we need people getting to work. Refuse has to be picked up, right? All these functions have to continue. So when they talk about shut down, we have to make sure we're operational and healthy and functional.
I know you've had trouble with the phrase shelter in place, but are you considering any kind of more stringent restrictions on people leaving the home or going to businesses or things like that?
Yeah, I believe communication is important, and I believe words are important. Say what you mean, and don't say what might alarm people. The level of alarm in this country, in this state, especially in New York City, is higher than I have ever seen it. Somehow people have the idea that New York City may be quarantined, may be locked off, that they may be imprisoned in their home. I don't know where none of that is going to happen. None of that is going to happen. There is no quarantine plan for New York City. Oh, he said to me, well, you did a containment plan for New Rochelle. My containment plan in New Rochelle didn't contain anyone. It was a bad word. It meant to contain the virus. You could come and go in New Rochelle. Schools were closed, large gatherings were closed, but there was no quarantine containment. Well, you called out the National Guard. I called out the National Guard to help with food delivery and cleaning surfaces. And by the way, we use the National Guard every time there's a snowstorm or a fire or a flood. I call out the National Guard. It does not signal martial law, you know. Shelter in place. Mandatory evacuation, but you don't have to evacuate. Well, then don't call it mandatory evacuation. Mandatory fasting, but you can eat. Well, then don't call it fasting. If you look at the principles of shelter in place, first of all, shelter in place is deceptive because it does have a meaning. Shelter in place literally means it's currently used in an active shooter context. It was most recently used for nuclear war protection. And what shelter in place meant was find the room in your house with no windows where you would be free from smoke or gases and stay there until you get the all clear sign. That's where it comes from. Well, we mean a modified shelter in place. Then don't say shelter in place. Say modified shelter in place. If you look at what other places call shelter in place, it's what we're doing now.
Well, not exactly, though. I mean, what
virtually.
they're doing in the San Francisco Bay Area is basically warning people, you know, only do essential things. You can go get medicine, you can go get groceries, things like that. Would you consider that sort of model, the San Francisco model, for New York City or any place in the state?
You want to wager $1? That's not what San Francisco model says. Be careful, because there it is. So I won't take your $1. The shelter in place, except go out for essential services, walk the pet, go out for exercise, walking, biking, running, family members' homes to help with a family member or a family member pet. Well, if I'm going out to help with pets, right, I'm not in a room in a post-nuclear holocaust waiting for an all-clear sign. So language matters. That's all I'm saying. We are doing, excuse me a second, businesses, we're down to only 25% of the workforce should go to work. That will continue to adjust with the spread. On the residential side, stay home. Stay home. If you have to go out to shop for essential services, go out to shop. If you have to go help a family member, they have a problem, go help a family member with a problem. And if you have to get outside of the house to exercise, to get some fresh air, which is 100% necessary for a lot of people in a lot of circumstances, then do it. But social distancing, just stay away from people. Stay away from these people, even in New York City parks, who are all clustered together. I don't know what they're thinking. Stay away from people. A person can infect you, and they won't even know that they have the virus. And then a special consideration, if you are a senior citizen, then hyper cautious on all these points, or compromised immune or underlying illness. But if you look at the actual rules, Jesse, what San Francisco's doing, what we're doing, they're virtually identical.
So is it just semantics at this point?
Words matter at this point. Words matter. Quarantine, lockdown. These words are scary words, and nobody is talking about those things.
But San Francisco isn't talking about those things.
Well, shelter in place is a scary term for people, especially when they don't know what it means, and especially when you're not doing what it means. If you're not doing that, why do you call it that? We have a mandatory evacuation policy, but you don't have to evacuate. Well, then why did you call it mandatory evacuation? You know what I mean? Why do you scare me and then I have to get unwound, right? There's not an active shooter, shelter in place. It's not a nuclear holocaust, shelter in place. Wait for the all clear sign. There's not going to be any all clear sign, right?
Are you worried about filing petitions on time now that the deadline has been shortened?
We changed the dates. Didn't we, son?
So what the legislature did yesterday was they passed a law to make the filing deadline for the petition travel with the new end date of the petition. Previously, it had been, I think, March 30th, and then between April 1st and April 3rd, you had to file. So if you see, the dates actually just traveled exactly. The issue with leaving the filing deadline open is it invites fraud. People can continue to go out and collect signatures and predate them. So that was all that we did. We had the dates travel together.
On the topic of rumors spreading and things going through social media, there is a lot of chatter on social media about the village of Curious Joel and the Hasidic community there. Do you know anything about any positive tests in that village, and is that an area of concern at this point?
I have not heard that, John. I haven't even heard the rumors. Normally I hear the rumors.
Broadcast here, but I mean, there are rumors of positive tests in Curious Joel, and I'm trying to figure out if that's true.
I have not heard. Not that we're highly attuned to rumors, unless they come from the LCA. Those rumors were here.
Of the 777 people that are hospitalized, how many are in the ICU and how many are intubated at this point?
We would have to get those numbers for you. You know, we're giving you the most recent numbers on a rolling basis, but then sometimes they come with incomplete information as to where is everyone. And the numbers are getting so big now that they're hard to get all the particulars. But as soon as we get them, we'll give them to you.
What is the effect of people the state has in China trying to procure more ventilators? Is it just
there is a global, you know how we went through the price gouging on like hand sanitizer? And, you know, we make our own hand sanitizer here in the state of New York. I can get it for you. I know people.
Very keen on getting results.
I know people. Citric smell. I was kidding when I said it was that floral bouquet. I took a pounding for that. I thought it was an obvious joke. Obviously, not everybody appreciates my sense of humor. Yeah, I know. I know too well. What was the question again?
Ventilators.
Ventilators. We had price gouging on the hand sanitizer. The ventilators, there is a global rush for ventilators. And literally, we have people on the ground in China. You can't even buy them from China. And as I mentioned, I had the National Governors Association. I had most of the governors on the telephone yesterday. And every state is looking for them. That's why the federal government has to come in and handle this. Because, see, I believe the Army Corps of Engineers and the state working together can create more beds. The beds do me very little good without the ventilator, because almost all of these COVID cases require the ventilator. And a bed is great, but if you don't have the ventilator, then the bed is virtually useless. There is a federal stockpile of medical equipment. I haven't gotten an official number, but the suggestion is that stockpile has about 12,000 ventilators for the nation. Again, just for context, where we are, we have about 5,000 or 6,000 secured. We need 30,000. Federal government has 12. I mean, this is a bad situation. And it would literally take the federal government to say to manufacturers, stop what you're making or start making these machines. They're fairly technical, as I understand it, but the supply chain issues are real. But it would take the federal government saying, we need to make these ventilators. It would take the federal government to say, we need PPE equipment, we need gloves, we need masks. You know, when the CDC starts putting out guidance, you can use a scarf as a mask. You know, it's time to make more masks.
Governor, there's a sales tax deadline tomorrow, and yesterday the Restaurant and Tavern Associations wrote a letter to you practically begging you to delay that deadline. Is that at all a possibility?
You know who that is?
Who's that?
That's John Campbell.
Ooh.
You know the video on baloney? He's the man.
Well, whatever.
No, go ahead.
Video too.
Go ahead. No.
We'll talk later.
Okay, we'll talk later.
But on the sales tax deadline.
So I don't like to answer his questions because they're
But
pretty.
if you can answer this one here.
Rob can answer it because I don't know the answer. I was just stalling.
Is there any chance that that sales tax deadline is going to be delayed?
We're looking at the deadline, but just to be clear, this is for sales taxes. So we're looking at the deadline, but just to be clear what that, we're not asking them to pay anything. They're holding taxes that belong to the state. But we're looking at the deadline because they might not be able to file and the timing of it. So we're considering, and we'll have something, a decision on that today.
Thank you.
Governor, what's the effect of this new federal law, the coronavirus stimulus, on the state budget? You said before your budget couldn't work if that House bill passed the Senate.
There's no real money for the state in the budget.
Of every person in Chester County who is feeling the immense impact of this pandemic. Commissioner Maxwell and Commissioner Kickline will provide more information on this later. But first, I'd like to ask Jean Kasner, Director of the county's Health Department, to provide you with an update on the status of COVID-19 in Chester County.
Thank you, Commissioner. As it is currently being updated on our website, we have 10 positive cases in Chester County. Our age ranges are from 20 to 29, we have 1 case, 30 to 39, 4 cases, 40 to 49, 1 case, and 50 to 59, 4 cases. 6 males, 4 females, 7 municipalities are impacted. The following 3 municipalities have 2 positive cases: East Goshen Township, West Marlborough Township, Westchester Borough. The following 4 have 1 case each: Malvern Borough, North Coventry Township, West Pikeland Township, and Willistown Township.
Chair of the Delaware County Council to provide an update on coronavirus situation in Delaware County.
Hello, everyone. Our last update from the Pennsylvania Department of Health was yesterday at 2 p.m. As of yesterday, the Pennsylvania Department of Health had announced 37 additional positive cases of COVID-19 in the state. There are 5 new cases in Delaware County, bringing the total number of cases in the county to 14. The total number of cases in the state is 133. Sadly, yesterday afternoon, Governor Wolf confirmed the state's first COVID-19 related death. The person was an adult from Northampton County. Delaware County Council, the county's Department of Emergency Services, and the county's Department of Intercommunity Health have been coordinating with the Pennsylvania Department of Health and local hospitals to offer drive-through COVID-19 testing at local hospitals and at additional locations throughout the county. There are now sites up around the county through various healthcare networks. A physician's referral is required for all testing at each site. Delaware County Citizens Court is a critical component to the county's emergency response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The all-volunteer organization is vital to ensuring our residents are protected. There is an immediate need for volunteers to staff call centers and support screenings, testing, and logistics operations in response to the COVID-19. Many people in the community are asking how they can help. Right now, residents can do the greatest good for the greatest number by volunteering with the Citizens Corp of Delaware County. Residents can learn more and sign up here at www.delcocitizenscorp.com. The Delaware County Government Center has been closed to the public since Monday and will remain closed to the public for the remainder of the week. Government Center offices are operating with a reduced and staggered staff to ensure the continuity of government. However, the offices will not be open to the public. Residents can call government offices this week, but they will not be able to access the building. The Delaware County Court of Common Pleas made modifications to judicial operations for the week. In coordination with the District Attorney's Office and the Public Defender's Office, the courts will be holding video criminal hearings. No members of the public or family members will be permitted into the hearings in observance of the social distancing protocol. More detail about next week's operations of Delaware County Government Center, the Delaware County Court of Common Pleas, and Magisterial District Courts will be released in the following days. During last night's public meeting, Delaware County Council unanimously voted to extend the deadline to qualify for the discount for the payment of county property taxes. The new deadline has been extended to April 30th, 2020. Please note, this extension only pertains to county taxes. This week, Council participated in several phone town halls to update the public and listen to their concerns. The Delaware County Chamber of Commerce hosted a phone town hall on Tuesday aimed to business leaders that may be impacted by COVID-19. Senator Carney and Congresswoman Scanlon also hosted phone town halls for the broader community. Council and other community leaders participated in both. We tried to answer as many questions as possible and address your concern. Please know we are listening. And this partnership serves as an example. Many residents have been expressing that they wanted to know more information. We believe this partnership with Chester County will allow us to have more detailed information to make more informed choices. I have a few updates for members of the business community. The state has released information on COVID-19 unemployment compensation, including eligibility guidelines and instructions on how to file a claim. The SBA announced loan information for businesses impacted by COVID-19. The Delaware County Commerce Center is asking business owners to complete a short online survey on how COVID-19 is affecting their businesses. Working with their regional Southeast PA economic development partners, the Commerce Center is using the data collected through the survey to help address the needs of our greatest business community. The Foundation of Delaware County announced a new Delaware County COVID-19 Response Fund. Established by the Foundation, the fund is a partnership with area businesses, government, and community partners. 100% of the donations will go directly to vulnerable communities in Delaware County. In the last update, residents are encouraged to register for the Delco Alert notification system, which alerts residents of updates and emergencies. You can register at www.delcopa.gov/delcoalert/delcoalert.html. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. As elected officials in Chester County and Delaware County, our priority is to make sure our citizens remain safe and healthy. As I noted earlier, partnerships are an extremely important part of our focus. Delaware and Chester counties have a long history of working together and supporting each other in times of need, especially when it comes to public safety and public health. As members of the Southeast Pennsylvania Regional Task Force, we exchange public safety resources and exercise plans all the time. Together, we have trained, planned, and practiced for situations such as this. So knowing this, it made complete sense to start a conversation with our Delaware County colleagues last week to see how Chester County's health department could lend support to our neighbors in Delaware County. We analyzed our efforts, processes, and resources to date and realized that Chester County does have sufficient excess capacity. I repeat, does have sufficient excess capacity to handle Delaware County's public health needs, as well as Chester County's needs during this outbreak. Having reached this conclusion together, on Saturday afternoon, I sent a letter to Governor Wolf and Secretary of Health, Dr. Levine. The letter was written on behalf of both Delaware County Council and Chester County Commissioners to respectfully request that the Chester County Health Department be authorized by the state to assume responsibility and work completely with Delaware County's elected officials and staff regarding Delaware County's public health response to the coronavirus outbreak.
Welcome everyone here to News Now. I'm your host, Mike Pace. We are live for you on 2 hours right here on Fox 10 Extra. We are handling coronavirus coverage for you from around the country, and of course right here in Arizona. We're going to have a update for you live in Arizona in just moments. Just want to take you out nationally and really internationally what we're looking at right now. 220 learned that the cases now in Arizona have reached 44. We have Governor Doug Ducey and other state officials talking about that right now. Let's take a listen live here on News Now.
Avoid social visits, shopping trips, and discretionary travel. Choose curbside pickup or drive-through for meals. Avoid sick people, and do not visit nursing homes, retirement homes, or long-term care facilities unless you are there to provide critical assistance. Please implement the prevention measures aimed at reducing the spread of respiratory viruses by washing your hands, using alcohol-based hand sanitizer, avoid touching your face with unwashed hands, avoid close contact with people who are sick, stay home when you are sick, and cover your cough or sneeze with a tissue. If you need to see a provider, consider using a telemedicine option. We are getting a lot of questions about testing for COVID-19, and I want to provide you with the latest information. There are now several commercial laboratories that can test for COVID-19. However, as you've heard, there is a national shortage of test collection supplies and lab reagents. There are not enough tests for everyone who wants to be tested at this time. But it's important to know, because there's no specific treatment for the disease, the results of a COVID-19 test will not change your clinical treatment while you are sick. Doctors will still care for you the same way. People with mild symptoms should stay home when they are sick and for 72 hours after their symptoms go away. People should seek emergency care if they have extreme difficulty breathing, constant pain or pressure in their chest, severe constant dizziness, or other serious concerning symptoms. We know that many healthcare and laboratory partners are in the beginning stages of implementing screening locations once the supplies become available. We are working with our sites and our federal HHS partners to continue standing up additional screening locations throughout the state. In order to support this activity, we have issued a standing order that will allow symptomatic Arizonans to receive screening at these sites. The Arizona State Public Health Laboratory will continue to prioritize and test samples from those with known risk factors that are sent from our county health partners. As of today, the Public Health Lab has tested 350 people. We've ruled out 175, and there are 130 samples pending. If you are sick, because we know that we expect to see more cases, we recommend that people with mild symptoms of the disease stay home, get plenty of rest, drink lots of fluids, and call their healthcare provider if they have questions regarding which medications to take to help with their symptoms. If you are ill and need to see a doctor, please call ahead before going in so they can give you instructions on how to keep other patients safe. And this is important. Unless it is emergency, do not go to the emergency room. Hospitals and healthcare workers need to focus on the most vulnerable patients, the elderly and those with medical complications. Consider using options such as your primary care provider, a nearby urgent care, or consider using telemedicine where you can talk to a provider from the comfort of your own home. Everyone in our community has an important role in protecting our public health. Even small steps like covering your cough or staying home when you are sick could be life-saving to others. As always, public health is engaged in this in 24/7. We are thinking ahead and anticipating our next steps. Current factual information can be found at cdc.gov, azhealth.gov, or from your local health department. And we will continue to provide the public with the most up-to-date information and advice on how to keep you and your loved ones safe. Thank you. We're happy to answer any questions. So we are currently working very diligently to get our entire website translated into Spanish. So that should be coming within the next day or two. You can call. We do have bilingual people that can talk through what to do if you have symptoms or where to go potentially if you need to be seen. So they can call the Arizona Department of Health Services, or you can contact your local public health department.
Justin?
I want to make certain that everyone knows the state's going to speak with one voice. We have been following the CDC guidelines in alignment with NIH. We have been hand in glove. Every morning we meet with Dr. Christ. We review what the guidance is. This guidance has changed over time. It will continue to change. After this meeting, we're going to be on a video conference call with the Vice President, CDC, NIH, and the other 50 governors, and we'll make the appropriate announcements as circumstances change. We have been clear and in alignment on the communication. Like I said, these things can change. We'll make the appropriate announcements at the appropriate time, and we've been in alignment with CDC and NIH. That's been our guidance every morning, and it will continue to be. I'm going to be guided by the facts and the situation on the ground in the state of Arizona. That's what we're going to make the decisions is regarding our state and our statewide. Our guidance is statewide. Situation, I'm going to let the
So in Arizona, our local public health departments are our boots on the ground and the experts on the disease and the contact investigation. They are currently investigating cases in Pima County and would be the best source of information for that.
So as far as you're aware, there haven't been any deaths in Arizona related to COVID?
When we looked yesterday, there had not been any deaths reported due to coronavirus.
Dennis, and then we'll come over to Allie.
So I want to say our first thought through this crisis to date has been around public health, and that's been what we've been focused on, what my team's been focused on, what Dr. Kara Christ has been focused on. Many of the decisions that we've made have been to protect public health, but also to do our best to navigate through this as a state in the safest and most responsible way. And my heart goes out to not only the people that are home and sick and that are homeschooling with school out, but of course our small businesses and their employees. We're going to be working with Democrats and Republicans on a menu of what we can do from the state level. We're also working with the federal government on that package and what can be done. And the budget that was released on January 21st is going to change dramatically because we're in dramatically different times. Our social safety net is going to be stretched, and we're going to be the ones stretching it as far as we can to protect the most vulnerable and to help real people in this tough economic time. We are gonna make decisions that help real people in difficult situations.
Allie, go ahead.
This might be more directed to Dr. Chris, but I see some states reporting ages. I know there's a lot of uncertainty as to who is spreading and who's actually getting it. Will Arizona soon?
A lot of information on a lot of various diseases, and we want to protect the patient confidentiality because I'm sure if we had, I would not want my personal information put on the website if I had a disease that was reportable. If we feel that there is a danger to the public, we will release the information that they need to know.
We, our original guidance in coordination with the superintendent was through the 28th. The president gave some guidance at the federal level, which of course we'll comply with, and we're going to continue to work and communicate so that we make the right decision for public health, that we over-communicate, and we're going to be visiting with the superintendent to make certain that our parents have certainty. The goal, of course, would be able to do whatever we can going forward, but we want to do it in a responsible way. But we're going to make that announcement at the appropriate time. And Superintendent, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I would just add that I appreciate the close communication with the governor's office, and that's a strong consideration in terms of how much longer schools need to be closed for.
We have time for one more. We'll go to JJ.
Risk information or the outcome of the commercial labs right away. Of the cases that I am aware of, we have had elderly involved in this, and we have also had hospitalized patients. I am aware of 3.
Thank you, everyone. You know how to reach us for more questions. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
All right, so that was a wrap up there from Governor Doug Ducey and other state officials. So we know now that the total number of cases is 44. They continue to work in the state here as we all try to get a handle on the situation. We're seeing bars, restaurants closed throughout the state, throughout the country. So many people out of a job right now, unfortunately, because of everything that is happening. So we'll keep an eye out on Arizona. We'll take a quick break right now. And when we come back, we'll show you President Trump's full news conference that he just wrapped up moments ago.
Not only to the great team here at the National Response Coordination Center and FEMA, as FEMA takes the lead in implementing the policies that you approved from the White House Coronavirus Task Force, but as you do continually, Mr. President, I want to thank all the governors that are joining us today. Today is an opportunity to talk about the progress that we are making on mitigation, on testing, on supplies. We understand as FEMA's.
Welcome back, everyone, here to News Now. So we were taking a governors of the United.
Want to be prepared for that, and
they said you shouldn't have gotten it. You had no symptoms.
They got their supplies. They probably bought them on the open market. There's a choice.
Why have they not been activated and sent to New York City and New York State and California and Washington State, where they could be? There's 8,150 inspections that yielded only 6 to ensure this.
Denise Reynolds, she is the Chief Nursing Officer at Memorial Hospital West, right across the road. Jennifer Goldman is the Medical Director for Memorial Primary Care Centers, and she's going to be integral to operations here in the testing center when it gets up and running. We have Dr. Paula Eckert. She is the Chief of...
They said you shouldn't have gotten it. You had no symptoms. You know, the whole thing. So in other words, if you get it, it was no good. But I'm a unique case, unfortunately. But no, people that don't show symptoms and people that have doctors that say they shouldn't get it, I would rely on that. Yeah, I would rely on that.
Mr. President, thank you. Mr. President, thank you. I have 2 questions. Do you consider the term Chinese?
OAN.
Yes, sir. Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you very much. They treat me very nicely.
Do
Go
you
ahead.
consider the term Chinese food racist because it's food that originates in China or it has Chinese?
No, I don't think it's
And on that
racist.
note-
I don't think it's racist at all.
On that note, major left-wing news media, even in this room, have teamed up with Chinese Communist Party narratives, and they're claiming you are racist for making these claims about Chinese virus. Is it alarming that major media players just to oppose you are consistently siding with foreign state propaganda, Islamic radicals, and Latin gangs and cartels, and they work right here at the White House with direct access to you and your team?
It amazes me when I read the things that I read. It amazes me when I read the Wall Street Journal, which is always so negative. It amazes me when I read the New York Times is not even, I barely read it. You know, we don't distribute it in the White House anymore, and the same thing with the Washington Post. Because, you see, I know the truth. And people out there in the
Fate and future is inside of us. It's decisions at the end of the day, not conditions that determine that fate and future. We're not victims of circumstance. We can make decisions to meet moments. And this is a moment we need to make tough decisions. This is a moment where we need some straight talk, and we need to tell people the truth. We need to bend the curve in the state of California. And in order to do that, we need to recognize the
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by and welcome to the media briefing on coronavirus. At this time, all participant lines are in a listen-only mode. Later, there will be an opportunity for your questions. Instructions will be given at that time. I'll now turn the conference over to Supervisor Catherine Barger. Please go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Supervisor Catherine Barger, Chair of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. I want to thank you all for joining us to discuss the next phase of our effort to combat the spread of the coronavirus. I want to thank Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti for your leadership and for being a partner during this difficult time. I also want to acknowledge Mayor Tornick and Long Beach Mayor Garcia, who both have their own separate health departments in their cities for their leadership and also for their partnership. Our own Los Angeles County Public Health Director, Dr. Barbara Ferrer, has been leading an impressive and responsive team to this growing pandemic. We are now taking additional steps to address this crisis. Los Angeles County Health Officer Dr. Davis has worked with the cities of Pasadena and Long Beach to sign a public health order that covers the entire county of Los Angeles. The order, which we are calling Safer at Home, is the next step to protecting our residents from the coronavirus by increasing social distancing. We know that staying home and limiting close contact is the best way to prevent community spread. We know that social distancing does not mean restriction from going outside and does not mean isolation. We still encourage you to stay connected to your community and loved ones in creative ways and to spend much needed time outdoors. People working in essential functions within the healthcare, government, and food industries will still be on the job, but we encourage other employees to stay home. The Safer Home order allows communities to shop for essential items at the market, pharmacy, hardware store, and more. LAUSD and other school districts will continue to provide school services, which they should be doing. Under these guidelines, we're asking people to refrain from gathering in an enclosed space with more than 10 people. Details on the health order will be provided by Dr. Ferrer shortly and will also be available online, including a document that will be created called Frequently Asked Questions, and that will be available to all of our cities so that everyone knows what we are asking. We know this will have an impact on the social fabric of our communities. We are striving to minimize this burden while protecting the overall health and well-being of our residents. We can't tell you exactly how long these orders will be in place, but we all know it will be temporary. We don't have to maintain these restrictions forever, and they will have invaluable long-term effects. There is no need for fear. We have plenty of resources available to help our communities get through this. I would like to ask everyone to only purchase what you need. Please do not stockpile, which leads to empty shelves and causes people to panic. We have enough food and essential items for everyone. I want you to help your community the best way you can and continue supporting local food establishments. Keep getting food from local establishments and delis through takeout or delivery. You can also order online from your favorite retailers or buy gift cards so that you can shop in the store when they reopen. Please, let's be kind to all those around us. If you have an elderly neighbor or friend, check in on them and see if they need you to pick up groceries. If you're looking for other ways to give back, you can donate food to nonprofits, assemble hygiene kits for those in need, or donate blood. Being safer at home doesn't mean being alone. You are still an important part of your community. To be able to contribute, we need you first and foremost to be kind to yourself by supporting your own well-being. Remember, you can take a walk, learn a new skill, read a book, video conference with loved ones, or enjoy open spaces. I encourage all our residents to continue to heed local, state, and federal public health guidance. As we know, this is a highly contagious virus. That is why we need to adopt these restrictions and measures. I want to remind everyone that the county is here to be a resource, especially when it comes to the latest public health information and updates on closures and impacts to county services. Please visit us online at lacounty.gov/COVID-19. Again, lacounty.gov/COVID-19. We are regularly posting updates to our social media pages as well. I want to take this opportunity to thank the public in advance for your help. Our shared focus and resolve is what is going to get us through this and into recovery. Let's all work together to protect the safety and well-being of every resident in Los Angeles County. Before I hand over the mic, I would like to acknowledge my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors for their continued friendship and support. I have a strong Chair Pro Tem, Hilda Solis, who has been constantly by my side to ensure the safety of our residents in Los Angeles County. Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas has been working tirelessly to prioritize a plan for those experiencing homelessness that are so susceptible to this disease. Supervisor Sheila Kuehl has been coordinating efforts with our probation department and prioritizing public safety, as well as emphasizing the need to serve our homeless population. And Supervisor Janice Hahn has been closely communicating with me to ensure the ports remain open and that they are well equipped to address the coronavirus while still allowing desperately needed goods to come into Los Angeles County. I am so grateful to serve our communities with them as our partners. With that, I would like to invite LA City Mayor Eric Garcetti to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know the mayors of Long Beach and Pasadena are going to join us up here to safe social distance if you'd like to come up now too as well. And thank you, Catherine Barger.